due to debt owed the company, the country can be plunged into doom so because the plant, as we know, provides the country with some 450 megawatts of power. Now, Minister of Energy John Jinapo has revealed this to Evans Mensah on PM Express.
They've given us an ultimatum to pay 100 million immediately.
Immediately?
Immediately.
I mean, immediately as in today?
No.
And if you don't pay the $100 million?
They'll shut the plant. And if they shut the plant, there will be a deficit of 450 megawatts minimum. Massive.
That will be significant.
That will be significant. As we speak, occasionally, when we have a challenge, like I say, sometimes you run a deficit of about 90 or 120, but immediately you bring a plant to cover. And even with that, you hear people complaining. So you can imagine if you lose 450.
Can you fix that? Can you avert that?
I'm meeting them with the finance minister on Friday. The first is to appeal to them that we're a new government. We need some time. Maybe finance minister may be able to come up with some money, even if we can't do the 100. But we also want to renegotiate their terms with them. They are the only company that has so far, let me not use the word refuse, that have so far not been able to agree on some renegotiated terms with government. All the IPPs have agreed. So I want to make a passionate appeal to Ohan that look, we brought you into this country, and I think that being in government, they should play ball with us. If they shut the plant, we'll have load shedding. But it means there will be no power to sell. It means they won't get the money at all. Because at least it's better to pay what we are paying now. And since we came, you can check from the industry players. I've insisted that we adhere to the cash water for mechanism. I've gone to cabinet. I've given directives. We're now operating a single treasury account. So all the monies ECG collect goes into one account.
Have you closed all their 80 plus accounts?
I've closed them. The banks are not happy. They've been complaining. They've gone reporting.
Every single one of them?
Almost every account that I know of.
That's a possibility. You're leaving the possibility that there are some you don't know.
I'm minister. I sit here as minister. I ask for information. ECG gives me the information and I give the directive. So to the best of my knowledge, every account that ought to be closed has been closed.
You are certain on Friday, after the appeal, you can come up with some arrangement that should give you some reprieve at least, until you can find 100 million for them.
I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that we'll find a solution. It's not easy. It's tough. This is what we've inherited. But we have to deal with it. And as a government, you inherit the assets, you inherit the liabilities, you inherit the positive, you inherit some of the negative.
We're keeping an eye on this particular meeting, which would, of course, determine whether or not this Karpowership plan will still contribute the 415 megawatt of power to the country or not. But this is coming at a time where we are being told that some of these independent power producers have begun already seizing Ghana's share of its oil in order to sell to defray debts owed them. Now, this is Ghana's Energy Minister, John Jinapo, again.
And as you can see, these are the debt portfolio. Asogli, 297 million.
That's what you can
Senate, 220 million. Yes. Send Power, 423 million. Car Power, 371 million. If you add all of them, 1.7 billion US dollars. That's what we've inherited.
And how much of this have you paid since you took it?
So far, we've paid NGAS some money. I think we've given them about 30 million. We are meeting Car Power on the 2nd with the finance minister to see if we can get some money for them. We've paid WAPCO some money because when we came, they had blocked part of the pipeline. They've opened it. And as a new government, you need to mobilize resources. They've even drawn down on the World Bank guarantee, the partial risk guarantee of 500 million.
Already?
It's been drawn to 50 million.
When was that withdrawn?
It was withdrawn before we took office. The Letasco guarantee, about 170 million, that has also been drawn down. So now our oil that would have sold to generate revenue to grow the economy, they've had to take that oil in order to repay.
Was that part of the agreement we signed with them that if you are not to pay, they can rely on
take
the
our oil? Yes.
Oil revenue?
That is it.
How are they accessing it? I mean, how does it work exactly?
They take the oil, they sell it.
Oh, so the oil we are entitled to?
They lift it.
They lift it,
They lift
sell,
it and sell.
And then they would knock off what?
Yes. But you see, we've done the first quarter, so We now appreciate and have a full overview of the challenges.
How many have they lifted so far?
I can check, but I think what I checked, they take
In value terms,
I
maybe?
think 4 a year. About 4 a year.
And if you sort of spread it over 4 quarters, they should have lifted one already in the first quarter of this year.
Yes.
And
So
do you
it's
know how much that
affecting
comes out to?
revenues.
Because that means opportunity cost for you.
Yes.
They lift, you have less in your account.
Yes, and some could hit about $70 million. That can be used for something very, very critical. But my vision now, and the vision of the ministry now, is solutions.
This is Top Story, as always, brought to you by Telecel and Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Let's bring in Ben Boache, who is Executive Director of the African Center for Energy Policy. He's joining us via Zoom. Ben, I'm grateful to you for joining. Now, is this a normal practice that entities can take over a sovereign country's oil and sell to defray debts?
Thanks for having me. I think it's even strange for us to hear this. The law is clear that every revenue due the state shall be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. And there are also prohibitions for collateralization and any encumbrances. So I'm surprised that anybody will go and sign an agreement with whoever, and as part of that agreement, waive the rights or the legal provisions that bars, any encumbrances and allow, Litasco to take the oil because they're the ones who are actually trading it. That is against the law. In fact, if you read particular provisions, Litasco itself may be breaching the law by their actions, because the law requires that if you are an entity that is supposed to pay petroleum revenues, either tax, royalty, or any crude liftings, the law says you shall pay into the Petroleum Holding Fund. So you don't even give the money to anybody, not even GRA. All you give to GRA are receipts to indicate that you have paid, for them to verify the payments. To the extent that anybody will go and sign, an agreement that allow the revenues to be encumbered, I think it's illegal to begin with.
Is there a possibility that it could have been done because of the times we found ourselves in? We needed to ensure that our country does not go back to the days of doom, so as we were all talking about.
Litasco is just one player in that space. They supply essentially liquid fuels, and I think under the old regime, I don't know whether he has to do in it. They supply liquid fuels, and the agreement they had was to give them preferential treatments for the supply of liquid fuels for power generation. And if you have that right, and also it gives you the room to trade our oil and make money off it, you go to the extent of also encumbering the oil that we produce and give to you to trade. I think they actually gone too far in this, and maybe those who signed the agreement allowed it to happen, and they also did not check their responsibilities under the laws of Ghana for getting into such a contract. So if you do that, what it then means is that anybody who owes Ghana tax revenue can decide that for any transaction that the state may owe them, they can, instead of paying taxes, net it off. We'll end up not having tax revenue to begin with. The country is structured with many institutions playing different roles. There's a tax authority whose role it is to actually ensure that revenues are collected when due. It's not for any politician in any department, agency, or ministry to undermine that function of the tax authority to collect revenue because they think government may default in action in a particular contract that they may have entered into with one party. So it's illegal to actually state it clearly for that to have happened. And
Okay.
I'm hoping that the minister would avert his mind to that illegality and remedy it.
Okay.
The petroleum law ensures that revenues are properly appropriated. A certain formula applies for future generations for a component to smoothing the budget in times of difficulty, and then a component goes to support the budget. If you take it upstream or prevent it from going through the budget, what you have done is that the portion that should have gone into the heritage fund will not go. The portion that should have gone into savings for turbulent times through expenditure smoothing wouldn't happen. So somebody has deliberately decided that the laws of Ghana will not be respected in that grave manner. And I think we have to take it seriously. And this is where maybe citizens and those of us watching sometimes also fail. We wait for resources to be mismanaged in this manner. And then we wake up one day to say that we have not benefited from the extraction of the resources. But it's the law that says that put the money into a particular use so that people can see the impact of the oil that is being extracted. And then somebody decides that he will collateralize the stream, and then the revenue doesn't even come for development altogether because of certain misbehavior and non-compliance with other contract terms. And we allow that to happen. The entire resource governance, it's abused.
Okay.
So
let me bring in the former Deputy Minister of Energy, Andre Japamesa, into this discussion to help us understand what really the issues are. Now, I'm grateful to you for joining here. Why would Ghana enter an agreement that guarantees an IPP or a player in that sector the opportunity to take our oil because we probably owe them?
Well, let me say good evening to cherished viewers and listeners. I've been taken completely aback by the statements that were made by the minister, and it's not surprising that Ben is arguing or making his point the way he is, because I'm not so sure whether he, as a civil society player in the oil and gas space, will not be aware if indeed the government of Ghana has commercialized oil. You push it. Ben, if any such action has indeed and in fact taken place or did take place under the government of His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo. So I don't know where the minister is coming from with this information about collateralization of our oil and IPP, taking our oil to pay obligations that are owed to them. I don't know where it comes from. What I know is that there is some guarantee that Letasco has issued to back payments of invoices that government owed Karpower. In 2023, that guarantee was renewed, and Letasco issued that guarantee for meeting the obligations of Karpower, or Government of Ghana's obligations to Karpower. GMPC initially intended to borrow some money as part of that entire transaction, but that was discontinued, and Exploco rather took some $250 million from the Letasco, and then the Letasco proceeded to issue the guarantee of, I believe, $120 million to back the Karpower transaction. That is what they are being paid for through the lifting of Exploco's share. Remember that during His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo's tenure, we increased our stake in the oil field, Jubilee field, by the acquisition of some 7.5% as part of the transfer from, I believe, cost. Ben, remind me, excuse me, but there was a transaction, right? And Adako was leaving, and Cosmos was buying their shares.
Yes.
So government of Ghana, as part of the transaction, acquired some 7.5 that was held by JOHL. That share was subsequently transferred to Exploco. So it's on the back of the Exploco share that debt was contracted, which was duly approved by Parliament in 2012 2023. And so I don't know what the minister is talking about with respect to GMPC, I suppose, share that is being used to collateralize anything.
So you're saying that the lifting is not as a result of a debt we owe, but that's an arrangement we entered into with Letaco.
Letaco, yes, certainly. And indeed, the management of our oil revenues is governed by law. There is actually a public interest PIAC, right, that oversees the management of our resources, if you like, or monitor the expenditures and revenues that come in. I've not seen any PIAC report that have faulted the Akufo-Addo government for doing anything untoward.
So these liftings.
So for the minister to come out in the manner that he did has created more confusion, and I believe that you guys have to call on him to provide further and better particulars as regards what he's talking about, because indeed and in fact, I'm confused as to what really the minister was seeking to say.
So do revenues from these liftings get paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund?
Yes, GMPC share, which is Government of Ghana shares, certainly go to the Petroleum Holding Fund.
So that of Letasco does not come in. They keep theirs. Is that what it means?
But of course, I mean, look, we need to get details, and I don't have it now, of the ex-local debt and the repayment terms. Okay, but I know that Parliament approved. In fact, it was part of the 2023 work program of GMPC, where they indicated that they wanted to borrow, I believe, 550 million. And also the guarantee all together came to about 720. Subsequently, the figure was reduced to about 450. Okay, some loan that they were contracting from Tasco and the refinancing of the guarantee that they had issued to support the car power transaction. I'm saying that in itself, in December of 2023, came to Parliament and it was approved duly.
Okay.
So I don't know what the minister is talking about. And like I said, that transaction itself was discontinued. However, Exploco, which was a beneficiary of the JOHL shares that we acquired, borrowed some money from Letasco and was using it, part of its lifting, okay, to repay that obligation.
Okay.
That's as far as I know.
Let me bring in Dr. Steve Mantel here. He's followed the oil and gas upstream sector for quite some time since it came. In fact, he's served in PIAC before. Doc, from what is happening, where do you see us heading?
Well, thank you very much, Kojo. There's a lot of issues and this development that needs to be clarified. In the news item that I heard said the IPPs have started seizing our parcels of crude. That's what we owe them. If that is correct, then it sounds a bit weird and very concerning for a number of reasons. One, the IPPs are not parties to any of our petroleum agreements. So you ask yourself, on what basis would they be lifting crude upstream? More so, to the best of our knowledge, they have not secured any judgment that assigns them that right to lift our share of crude on our behalf. Again, it is important to point out that the off-taker of the power they produce is ECG, a limited liability company, a legal entity that can sue and be sued. And so far as I know, our crude oil is not part of ECG's assets. And so I don't see how they can be encumbered in the transaction between ECG and IPP.
So if it's true that some of these IPPs have started lifting our oil, who must we hold accountable for this, and how do we progress from there?
Yeah, so the sense I get is that somebody must have negotiated. It sounds more to me like a negotiated settlement which, as Bembuache pointed out, is in complete violation of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Because the Petroleum Revenue Management Act insulates petroleum revenues from such encumbrances. The only exception being the annual budget funding amount and what accrues to the sinking fund, because the sinking fund was set up purposely for debt repayment. Other portions of the revenue, such as GNP equity financing, and what goes into the heritage and the stabilization fund are all insulated by the PRMA. So whoever went into that negotiated settlement to use our crude oil lifting is in breach of the law and must suffer consequences.
And how do we get there? Should that be the responsibility of PIAC seeing it, or Parliament must come in?
Well, PIAC's mandate only is to assist Parliament. So yes, in terms of the information, the data and all that, PIAC can assist. But it becomes the responsibility of Parliament to hold the executive to breaches of the law that they themselves passed.
But grateful to you. Let me bring in Ben Boachi. Ben, so what's your expectation? What should happen now?
I think some clarity is important. I think it's not IPPs that have incumbent the revenue, as the minister said. I think that miscommunication stems from there. It's Litasco. Litasco lifts our oil and trades it. So they lift it from the production platform on behalf of GNPC. And as part of that transaction, GNPC took a loan, which was used to procure light crude oil and HFO for power generation. So that is where the power sector actually comes in. But getting the clarity from the former deputy minister on, where this transaction all fits, that is using GOHL asset to actually securitize that investment. It brings back the conversation that we started, where government money, tax revenue, was used to acquire the asset, and that asset was given to another state entity called Esploco, and government decided that the revenues will not come into the petroleum revenue law or the petroleum holding fund.
Holding fund.
Yeah, exactly, and therefore, Esploco can use the money as it pleases, and that's where the confusion actually comes. And maybe we also renege and not sue government for not bringing that revenue under the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, which enabled them to do what they are doing. Now we're seeing how the entire stream is being encumbered by Litasco, and it clearly defeats the whole essence of the state participation in the sector. I mean,
so your point is that the minister made a mistake with who exactly is lifting Ghana's oil?
It's not a mistake of who. It's the transaction that actually allows them to encumber the revenue. And
I want a clarification in terms. The minister said some IPPs, but you say there could be a mistake in communication there. It is Litasco, right?
I'm sure he was clear, but maybe the lines and the sentences that he string together maybe confused everybody who interpreted it. Once Litasco is mentioned, everybody who understands how the setup works knows that Litasco is not an IPP. They are, a trading company, a crude oil trading company. So it couldn't have been an IPP that encumbered the resources. So it's Litasco that has done it. And it brings back the conversation about how we treat any participation of the state in the sector, especially when the state is the one that is funding it. If the state is funding an oil operation, then the law requires that all the revenues come under the Petroleum Revenue Management Act for us to judiciously use that resources. And this is where the Esploco angle is being used to circumvent the law, to circumvent the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. And we need to act quickly to avert an escalation of that kind of behavior.
Okay, all right. I'm grateful to you. Let me just take a concluding remark from Lawyer Mesa. You have been in that office. What must the ministry do?
Look, let's call a spade, right? The penchant of the minister throwing out matters that really is my friend. So I don't want to use words that, really... as far as I'm concerned, there's really no issue. Look, we can have a debate on whether Esploco's funds ought to come into the Petroleum Holding Fund and all of that. But as far as I'm concerned, this Litasco transaction was a refinance. It's been in place since, I believe, 2015. Okay, they provide guarantee for government on behalf to secure payments to Car Power. Okay, it's been refinanced 6 times. Exloco being a commercial entity, as to whether their fund ought to come into the Petroleum Holding Fund or not, as far as I'm concerned, is neither here nor there. Government share, which is held by GMPC, is what comes into the Petroleum Holding Fund. No encumbrances have been placed on that. There's Exloco, a commercial vehicle owned by GMPC, that has gone into this transaction. Nothing untoward has happened as far as I'm concerned.
But if the law says all revenues from our oil should be paid into the holding fund,
but all the revenue that is due the state on the GMPC is paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. There's been no encumbrance. And like I said, the local transaction was approved by Parliament as part of the work program of GMPC in 2023.
I'm grateful to you, Lawyer Andrew Ejapa-Mensah. This is where we would have to leave it. This has been Top Story, brought to you by Telecel Connecting Energies, Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Thanks to you, Dr. Steve Montoya, as well. He joined us on these conversations too. And also to Ben Boache. My name is Samuel Brace. Up next is Ghana Connect with Kweku Asante.